we have recently been working with Dell on oil and gas subjects. Dell has a tool to deploy software also, and Bryce from the Dell team has agreed to explain what is this tool. I mean, so we get a feel and see that we can actually have open source and non-open source together working very well.
So again, I want to thank the AnyLog team for inviting me to be here today. My name is Bryce Svenson. I'm part of our business development, the business development side of our Dell Distributed Private Cloud product line. We've had a really great time partnering with AnyLog specifically and seeing exactly what we can do with the team here and deliver this for several different customers. So I wanted to call out a little bit about why this is a good combination and how this works. So our product line called Dell Distributed Private Cloud. It used to be called Native Edge. We just did a recent rebranding. But really the value here is the ability to deploy servers, workstations, x86 compute devices in a very simplified, easy manner. And what that looks like is the ability to, I like to use the analogy of deploying a smart TV. So I assume that many of us here have deployed a Roku stick or set up a Amazon Fire Stick or just your general smart TV. But what you do is you plug it in, you connect it to the network, and it's ready to go. The thought process with what we've created here is we're trying to create that exact same experience for IT assets. And that melds really well with EdgeLake and AnyLog's ability for this to the ability to really create distributed data lakes in a very simple and easy manner. And so this becomes a very powerful combination. But when you're deploying things at the edge, and when you're deploying these things into locations that IT people generally don't go, there are several considerations that our customers were asking Dell for. So the first thing was, again, that idea of very easily and very simply deploying it. The second one was the idea of how do we make this highly secure, so that you aren't having employees or bad actors at these sites tampering with the devices, and how do we ensure that this works with many different use cases at once, rather than just being dedicated devices that you aren't able to update and manage over time. And so that kind of took us to the idea of how do we allow for this zero-touch deployment to actually happen. So we have a centralized management plane. The goal here is to accelerate that time to value, get these things deployed as quickly as possible, get those applications like AnyLog or EdgeLake directly in the customer's hands, pulling data and working as quickly as possible so that they can immediately get that TCO. From a deployment perspective, what we see often is that when we're deploying at these different edge sites across the world, whether that be in oil and gas rigs, manufacturing, industrial locations, retail, whatever it might be, what happens is it becomes a bunch of truck rolls. So you stage all these devices at a centralized location, you upload all the needed applications, and then you have someone going manually and delivering this to each of the locations. The idea here is how can we speed up that process? And so if we go here, the idea here is we drop ship the needed device for the location. We right size that for what the workload needs to be. You then are able to essentially have an employee plug it in and plug it in at the Ethernet cable and press the on button. That device will then call home, and it will be ready to be deployed and ready to be used. With the AnyLog team, we've developed a blueprint, and think of a blueprint as a recipe for deploying the application, an automation script that allows that to go very quickly, so that you can essentially deploy this as quickly as possible, and it turns into pressing a button rather than doing lots of manual work here. So these devices are delivered, you press and you plug them in, you connect them to the network, they deploy the OS of the device, and then they pull down the needed applications. This means that it's faster time to value. You can send less smart hands to these locations, and it becomes a very, very powerful solution in that regard. We talked a little bit about that secure device onboarding and that zero trust framework. What I want to call out here is this is a nice diagram to show exactly how that is working. So we embed a unique ownership voucher on the TPM of these devices as they leave the Dell manufacturing sites. They are then you then can drop ship them to the needed location. That unique ownership voucher is also loaded into that centralized orchestrator, that management plane. And then once the device is plugged and cabled and powered on, it'll call home. It'll do about 20 checks to ensure that it hasn't been tampered with. And then it will pull down the operating system and will also pull down the application set that the rules that you've created for those devices allow. So the power here is you deploy AnyLog to make sure that you're sharing all the data that you're gathering from these sites. Maybe you want to do some on-site inferencing on top of that, and so we also bring our own virtualization platform as well as native container runtime that you're able to layer these solutions on together and get as much value as possible out of that location and out of those devices that you're sending to those locations. So how does this integrate with AnyLog and EdgeLake? The big call out here is, again, I mentioned the word earlier, the idea of blueprinting. From a blueprinting perspective, we worked with the AnyLog team to package this up. A blueprint is essentially a group of YAML files that goes through every step that it takes to deploy an application. So we worked with the team here to create a validated blueprint that you guys can use. And essentially what you can do is you can take that blueprint and you can reuse it and deploy it very easily. And then from any updates perspective, as AnyLog gets more features, you're able to come back to that blueprint and use it to update all of these solutions. So essentially what we do is we take that package up solution, we go run through that workflow, and then that device is ready as quickly as possible. This is meant to make those day two operations very simple and allow the DevOps team to really have a smoother experience with getting these applications to. The other nice thing that I just want to call out is that we've actually created a visual Studio Code plugin that you're able to, let's say that you want to take a blueprint with AnyLog, you need to make some specific changes to how you're deploying it for your use case or for your EdgeLake solution. And this is something that will help you create those blueprints and make it as simple as possible so that you can, let's call it closer to a vibe coding solution to be able to deploy this easily and simply. The final call out here is, again, you can take a lot of these solutions that you want and that you are deploying in the cloud and bring them to the edge as well. So if you want to take Greengrass from AWS or whatever other solutions that might be out there, you can pull that down along with your AnyLog EdgeLake solution and bring a lot of those values that you've been getting from the cloud and actually deploy that the edge, and then using AnyLog create that let's call it I guess EdgeLake is the right word for it, but create that value there. And so this becomes a very powerful solution because you can continue to take the different blueprints that Dell supports or that our vendors and ISV support, as well as implement that with all the solutions that you're getting from the AnyLog and EdgeLake team here. The other call out here is, again, that you can deploy very simple Kubernetes blueprints that we already have built out. So this again becomes a very easy thing to get set up and then allow you to bring in whatever is needed for your own applications and containers that you want to run on these nodes. So this works on Dell hardware when it comes out of the factory. We also do have what we call a brownfield solution now. And so that brownfield solution is we can take third-party devices, whether they be whoever they might be, and we can actually deploy those third-party devices to as long as you download Ubuntu 22.04, you can bring the native edge the Dell distributed private cloud operating system on top of that, and you can have this same outcome from a application layer up to ensure that we're not going to force any of your customers to buy net new gear if they, let's say they bought a server last year and they're not ready to get rid of that investment. This is something that'll allow them to manage it and use it well, but also not have to get a new capital expense. We're seeing a lot of adoption. I think the key word is where there are many locations that are distributed. So we will see this being used in retail use cases. We'll see it in city and government use cases where there might be gathering a lot of data from let's think about infrastructure and things that might be out there from a state and local government perspective. We're seeing this to Eric's point, oil and gas. We're seeing people that want to hold all this data and hold all this data at rig sites and finery locations and downstream locations. But we're seeing pretty people excited to adopt these things. From there, we're also seeing a lot of adoption specific manufacturing and mining as well, where again, anything that is producing lots of data that is hard to make, it's difficult to make use of. These types of deployments make a lot of sense. And then again, it becomes a very prime opportunity for us to layer AnyLog on top of it so that they can limit the amount of cloud expenses and make this data more actionable, more quickly usable.
Multi-tenant environments. Let me give an example. Let's say we are implementing a microgrid on a military base, and so we have the utility has certain kinds of things they're doing. The military base has certain other kinds of things they want to do, and perhaps the city that this is in has emergency services that they want to operate out of it. So there's more than one tenant. And so we need to be able to manage the system so that each of the tenants is using the cloud environment, and yet they're able to sequester what they're doing for obvious reasons. Is this adaptable to a multi-tenant type of environment?
Yeah, very good question. So we have some role-based, some RBAC solutions that can allow you to do some level of multi-tenancy right now. It is in our roadmap, and we are working to delineate that out further. Obviously, with this use case that you're talking about, where we're talking about federal data and so forth, this needs to be very sequestered. And so I'd say that that's more of a roadmap item for exactly what you're asking for there, but there are some schemas we've created that allow that as well. So if you'd like, I can also would love to. I'll take a note of it, but also would love to. I'll grab your information, and then we can talk about what you're looking for there, because I know that our product team is looking for more of those exact use cases so that we get it right when it does go.
Sure. I mean, for the moment, we can operate separate stacks of hardware for the tenants, but the idea here is this is a miniature cloud environment. So in addition to sequestration of what's going on, you need to be able to account for the usage so that you can bill back for the usage. So there be those considerations as time goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add that because you can deploy VMs, not just containers, the VMs make it, you've got a completely separate environment. So each of your users can deploy a VM to the edge device that is completely separate from the other device, from your other users. So from a technology perspective, you can create these individual environments, but it still has some RBAC stuff built into the product that who can deploy and who cannot deploy.
Got it.
So John, sorry, I just want to add also something which is interesting in the multi-tenancy aspect. So I think deployment is one aspect, and I'm sure we could address that requirement. But there is also a really interesting question about, okay, once it's deployed and it's a multi-tenancy setup, how do you deal with the data in that sense and keep it private? And maybe somebody could look at data that belongs to multiple tenants if he's got permissions. So AnyLog has those policies, and you could associate even the data on different nodes to different permissions layers. So even if data belongs to the same table, you could still say, well, this person or this team could look at A and B, and a different team could look at just data of A or just data of B, meaning that you could put the data in a shared setup and give permissions and different permissions to different participants here. And everything is cryptographically secure, so it's a really strong setup to enable multi-tenancy in terms of the data. Yeah.
Very nice. The other aspect of the illustration I was just giving is that this would be a managed service. When you have multiple tenants, you have one group managing the facility, but then you have the different tenants that may have different applications that they're running, or that sort of thing. And so the question here is, you got different levels of service assurance kinds of things. You have the physical, hardware and this sort of thing. In a Kubernetes environment, you have the management of the container structure, which is kind of a science unto itself from a facilities management standpoint. And then you have the applications themselves, which require application knowledge as far as what's going on. So I was wondering if there's any provision for management services for these different levels. Just your thoughts as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. So I think let me see if I can get a good picture here for you. Just I think it makes it a little easier to see. So what you'll see here and let me see if I can get. I apologize, this isn't as big as I want it to get. Let me see if I. If you see in the top left, they have the inventory area there. So you have essentially this allows you to go to the infrastructure level. So you can look at just the infrastructure devices when you click on that tab.
Yep.
And that's what we're seeing on the screen here is those are the infrastructure ones. You can also go to deployments and it will list out each and every VM that is on those, and then from there you can SSH into the applications themselves. So this platform gives you a kind of a good home base for all of those use cases or all of that management, as well as making sure that the thermals are correct, all the different things that might matter with the hardware. And then from what Moshe and Mark were saying, this can then become a solution that allows you to you can kind of enter the application level where they'll manage the other portions on top, all from this as a centralized management plane.
Okay, I got it.
Bryce, can you talk a little bit about the profile of the hardware that you see at the edge and a little bit about how the management hub interacts, especially when you have firewalls and more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Setups.
I'm going to pull up some visuals because I think that always makes it a little better when we're talking about hardware options that are out there. So first, kind of talking about some of the form factors that we support. Let's see. So from a form factor perspective, again, we have hardened devices that are well suited for the edge. These are going to be, think of these as almost mid-sized servers. So they're going to have a certain amount of onboard storage that you pull in. They're set up as to be chassis so that you're able to make this very simple and easy to deploy. We're actually deploying a lot of these right now with a major customer where they're putting these inside of this and other components inside of a Pelican case so that they're able to just drop ship, plug it in, have a full clustered environment, so that it's very easy to manage and makes it as simple as possible for their customers. So we have we bring in these mid-sized servers that are more hardened and made for rugged edge use cases. We also bring in a lot more of your traditional servers that might be a little bit less hardened, but have different sizes. So we're able to bring in much smaller servers, so like the R260 or rack servers like that are going to allow you to have small workloads, but give you a really good solution that gives you some of that value there. We also bring in more what you'd expect to see in a data center. So again, if this edge site has more data center reasons or things that you need to do there, we can bring those in. The other big call out is, again, these tower servers, as well as we have some tower and rack workstations that we can bring in as well. So depending on the class of GPUs you need, depending on the class of redundancy you need and the type of components you're trying to use, we have about 20 different options that you can pull from a hardware platform perspective to make this as simple and easy as possible, and allow us to make sure that we're not oversizing your solution. The nice thing about this is, whether it's a workstation, whether it's a server, it's going to run the same and be able to be managed the same way, which gives us a lot of functionality compared to a lot of the other solutions that are out there on the market. In addition, we're seeing customers take some of these smaller workstation solutions and making HA clusters out of them because they need the high redundancy, but it might be a smaller workload. So rather than paying $50,000 to $80,000 for a small sized HCI solution, they can take three $1,500 workstations and the software licensing cost, and cluster those together and get an outcome that can be redundant, even if it works even if it is coming at a much lower cost level. So there's a lot of power there. Moshe, I think there was a second part of that question. I went into the hardware part. What was the second part?
Yeah, the second part is the profile of the management hub and how it works with security layers. And also, I want to add on that, on top of the hardware, if you see AI coming in and you have Jetson usage at the edges outside the cloud, how do you see that?
Yeah. So I'll do the Jetson question first, then we'll jump over to more of that management layer. So the Jetson devices, we're seeing a lot of adoption of that in the marketplace. People are right now we're only doing x86, but our product team is working on bringing in ARM devices. Dell actually has a Jetson type device. It's our GB10s are what they're called, and we're seeing a lot of customers using those in the field. And so we're working pretty furiously to get that into this platform as well. It does require some work on our end because we're moving over from an x86 perspective, but again, that's something that we're seeing in the marketplace. We're seeing that our customers are asking us to bring that into this platform because we have seen with deploying lots of those Jetson devices at the edge, it becomes a management nightmare if you have too many of them. And we've seen with several customers where they come back to us a year or two later after going down that route, and they're trying to figure out how to fit that into one of these workstations instead of the Jetson device, just because the manageability is not there from the perspective that they need, and the visibility into these devices, and that's where this platform becomes very powerful. So it's definitely an option. It's definitely something we're exploring, but this is we are suggesting if you're deploying lots of these and it's less of a snowflake, trying to move into a platform that's a little bit more repeatable and easy to manage using the software on top of this here. And then we're talking a little bit about that management layer. Let me see if I can find a good visual here that I can pull up. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of me having fun with my slide grab bag right here, guys. But let's see. So I think this gives some good visual into the management platform here. You have the centralized management ability to click into different deployments. You can SSH in. You can actually look at you can have different metrics and different logs pulled from these very simply and very easily. You can automate that. If you're trying to get security implementation, we do support Okta and other solutions like that allow you to manage who's actually coming into the system and making sure that making the security from that perspective. There's also ways that you can. This is a good call out. Like, let's say that you're deploying a blueprint, or let's say you're deploying EdgeLake or AnyLog. We actually, as you deploy that, will show a execution graph, and it can show you where that deployment happened, what went well. If it did fail, it'll show you where it failed in the process for debugging. And so this again has a lot of really nice quality of life features that are built into it, and meant to make it as easy as possible to optimize those deployments. This is a good call out that when you click on a device here that you see in the platform, it'll actually pull up a picture of it. So let's say that someone calls you and is like, hey, this device isn't working. Maybe you have a USB pass-through that you've set up for it. And someone plugged it into the wrong one, or unplugged it and plugged it into a different jack. You can help call out like, hey, I've opened up this one for this application. It makes it much easier to talk through more of those IT questions remotely with whoever might be on site there. Moshe, did that get to what you're kind of getting at? I know that there's a lot of aspects to it, so I want to make sure I'm not leaving anything out.
No, I think that's a good explanations. One thing. So you would usually deploy the management on the data center or the cloud, and that's
yes, very good question. So there's two options. Some customers want to be able to host this orchestrator themselves, that they want to have that control themselves. There's also now the option that you can actually use a SaaS platform where Dell will host that for you. The nice thing is we don't charge you more either way. From a pricing perspective, it's whatever makes the most sense.
Okay. By the way,
Yeah.
Moshe, while you're there's a question from Michael on the chat about the multi-tenant architecture with EdgeLake. Can you see it?
Sure, just a second. Chat.
And then we're gonna switch to the reality discussion. How did it go when Mark configured the EdgeLake AnyLog to run on your blueprint, and the fact that we have to redo it because you upgraded your version, and so that I think that's something it's worth a discussion, because it makes me think, are they going to change this every 6 months and then it's never stable, kind of? But we'll have Mark discuss this, okay? So Moshe,
Okay,
you see
sounds
the
good.
question?
Yeah. So to Michael's question, so the answer is yes. I mean, that's you could work per node and associate data of a node to specific permissions, even if you're in a setup where multiple nodes host the data of the same logical table. Let's say I've got my table of that represents machine A. And machine A could be spread on multiple nodes, and then you could have also machine B, which is the same type of machine A, so they share the same table. But you want to say, this node has permissions X, and a different node with the same type of data has permission Y, so you could give to the same person permission A on node A and permissions B on node B, even though the data, that it's the same data. This is something which you cannot do with a traditional database because there is no separation of, there is no association of the physical database infrastructure to the permissions. Whereas here you could say, because it's, and the idea is those are nodes that are distributed in physical locations and could have different groups or different setups that are associated with them. Even though the data is logically belongs to the same table, permissions could be separated by physical hardware. That's a really unique feature. And so, Michael, the answer to your question is yes, we could do it.
Michael, does this answer your question? You're unmuted.
Yeah, yes, it does. I was just sort of piggybacking off of John's multi-tenant question, and it seems like the Edge Data Fabric could be architected to give some help to that too. So from the data storage standpoint, but yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Moshe.
Okay, so now we switch to the next stage, which is, what we did physically. And Mark was the person in charge of writing the scripts and the parameters and testing it on the native edge. So Mark, floor is yours. Explain us and tell us about the new migration we have to do now.
So we're working on the new migration as we speak. We'll hope to have that in a week or so. Essentially what a blueprint is a definition of YAML files, Ansible scripts, and effectively a GUI interface. So it allows you to, when you deploy, it allows you to prompt in the GUI to enter AnyLog configuration information. So things like node name, other items that, for the AnyLog EdgeLake system, you have to have the LedgerCon, which is the blockchain emulator IP address. Those things can be entered via the GUI when you're deploying it. And then it goes through, effectively, it creates a VM on the Edge node, and then goes through an Ansible script, which effectively downloads and deploys the AnyLog agent using the variables that you used in the GUI. So that's essentially how it works in a nutshell. We have not upgraded to 4.2. Our blueprints were still at the 3.1 version. So we're working on that as we speak.
And was it complex to do it in the first time?
It took, so I will say Dell has added a ton of documentation to the 4.0 version, which they did not have in the 3.1 version. So it should be a lot easier to do the 4.2 than it was the 3.1. The biggest problem with the 3.1 is there was just not a lot of documentation at the time when I did it. So I had to basically reverse engineer an existing blueprint to get ours to work. But there's a much better documentation with the 4.2, so it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
Any question for Mark? No, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Keep talking, Bryce.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add quickly. That's kind of the second part to what Eric introduced here as well. Is this going to be an ongoing problem where we have to update that you're going to have pretty intrusive updates over time? We had some pretty major updates between the 3.0 and the 4.0 release. They should not be this disruptive moving forward. Just to call that out.